Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Xiaolin Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 51 of Xiaolin Showdown, Time After Time, Part 1. Now, this episode begins, as most episodes do, with the Xiaolin monks looking for a Shen Gong Wu. In this case, it looks like a pair of golden arm braces called the Makoto Arms, which is supposed to have the power to give whoever uses them great upper body strength, which, considering that there are a lot of strength-enhancing Shen Gong Wu, that seems redundant, but whatever. They find it, it's at a building that's under construction, they fight Jack Spicer, bing bang boom, they get the Shen Gong Wu, and for added bonus points, they beat the shit out of Jack Spicer. Mostly because Dojo was watching them and judging them because, as we've established for a couple episodes now, Master Feng is looking for one among the group who could be made the leader. As such, they all return to the temple victorious with both the Shen Gong Wu and several of Jack's personal belongings, and so Master Feng says that the time is drawing near for one of them to be named the leader. However, before he can make a final decision, well, the Xiaolin monks need to go on one more quest. After this quest is complete, then he will name the leader. But the thing is, it's not a quest that is going to be assigned to them. It has to be one that they choose. It has to be something that they want to be challenged by. And as such, the Xiaolin monks decide that they want to they try to figure out what kind of quest they want to go on in order to prove their worth. And of course, all of them end up drawing blanks. However, as they're in the middle of all this, and then subsequently try to spy on each other, the temple gets attacked by Jack Spicer. It gets attacked by Wuya and Chase Young, who once again have made up their differences because, well, apparently they're staying together for the sake of evil. And as such, Chase sticks his cats on the Xiaolin monks while he and Wuya raid the Shen Gong Wu vault, and as a result, basically the Xiaolin monks are just kind of left well, worse for wears, basically. Their clothes are shredded, they're just kind of nursing wounds, they're just not doing so well. As such, in the midst of all this, Raimundo laments that if Chase Young wasn't around, then their quest to find all the Shen Gong Wu and keep the world safe would be a lot farther along than it would be right now. And that's what gives Omi an idea. He thinks that for his quest, he's going to go back in time and stop Chase Young from ever becoming evil. The only problem is, he doesn't know how to. After all, the only time-traveling Shen Gong Wu the Xiaolin monks had, the Sands of Time, is in the future, hidden by Omi's own older self. So it's not like he can just go and grab it from some random place. It's in a place he literally cannot travel to unless he's really keen on waiting. However, Dojo thinks that maybe that is what Omi should do. As he recommends that, like with the season 2 opener with Days Past, maybe Omi could use the Orb of Toonami to freeze himself and then wake up 80 years later and then go talk to his older self to find where the Sands of Time are. As such, Omi thinks this is a great idea, and as such, he goes beneath the temple greenhouse, where that little vault where they keep the Xiaolin seed, and he basically sets up the Eye of Dashi to a recorder. The recorder is set to a timer for 80 years, and so once 80 years pass, the recorder will basically play a recording of Omi activating the Eye of Dashi, which in turn will activate the Eye in the real world, and thus it will unfreeze Omi when the time is right. However, before Omi can freeze himself, Dojo wants to come along, and, well, he's acting as the Shen Gong Wu receptacle, as Omi doesn't want to go into this journey empty-handed, and so he grabs whatever Shen Gong Wu they have and just throws them in a sack and shrinks them down with changing chopsticks and puts them in Dojo's ear, because apparently that's where all the trash goes. But either way, Omi and Dojo get into position, and so Omi freezes himself in Dojo with the Orb of Toonami, and so, well, 80 years comes and goes. The days pass, things go by, and so once the timer is up, the Eye of Dashi is activated and Omi and Dojo are unfrozen. As such, Omi is super excited to meet his future self. He can't wait to see how he's grown over the years, and so he and Dojo run up from the temple greenhouse, but once they enter the temple grounds, it's not doing so well. The temple is, well, to say it's not seen better days is an understatement. There's nothing left but ruins. All that's left of certain buildings are just like bits of brick and rock and some doorways, and even the Shen Gong Wu vault is just practically gone, with the actual vault itself having been raided of all its Shen Gong Wu. And as such, Dojo and Omi wonder what the heck happened to the Xiaolin temple to cause this, and they end up getting their answer as they're attacked by robots. very familiar looking robots. Although these ones are a lot more elite than what you would expect, as they're bigger, stronger, armed with lasers, and seem to be more adept at fighting than Omi is used to. And while he is able to take out a good chunk of them using his Wudai weapon and his own capabilities, well, the thing is, the robots are, like I said, the robots are a lot larger, and their numbers continue increasing the longer Omi fights. And even the ones that Omi destroys manage to find some way to quote-unquote reassemble themselves in order to best face him. I say quote-unquote because rather than rebuilding completely, their weapons just literally come together and form a new robot that just is literally all four limbs are weapons. As such, Omi eventually kind of has to face facts, as the robots basically have him outnumbered, and so he surrenders. And as such, the robots end up taking Omi away to what looks like Chase Young's hideout, but the little demon face that's supposed to act as the doorway? Above the demon eyes are a familiar pair of goggles, and once Omi's brought there, he's thrown into basically a massive prison. And when Omi looks to see who owns the prison, well, it turns out that right there on what looks like a giant pillar or smokestack, whatever, it says Jack Spicer's prison. Yep. Jack Spicer has ruled the world. And, well, when it comes to the good guys, they're not doing so well either. As while Omi starts looking around the prison, it turns out that, thankfully, he finds the other Xiaolin monks. Old, but alive and well. As such, Omi is happy to see them, but he kind of wants to know what the hell happened. And, well, Omi's absence happened. Basically, when Omi disappeared all those years prior, well, basically, he altered the flow of history. So, hold on one second. Sorry about that. But yeah, like I said, Omi's absence from the world basically altered the flow of history. So the thing is, when Omi froze himself, he fully expected that when he arrived in the future, there'd be an old Omi waiting for him. But the Xiaolin monks just point out to Omi that, well, by doing what he did, he ensured that there was no old Omi. After all, Omi was frozen. He couldn't grow into the old man that he would have become in the Sands of Time episode. And as a result, with no old Omi in the equation, well, let's just say the battle for victory became an easier job for evil. As well, my personal theory is this. So you remember back in the Sands of Time episode when what basically the inciting incident for that episode was a message from the future from old Omi warning the Xiaolin monks to find the Sands of Time because some great evil thing was going to be happening? Well, the thing is, if Omi froze himself, that would mean that there was no old Omi to send that message back. Meaning that the Xiaolin monks would never have been able to properly prepare for whatever this oncoming assault was. And as a result of this, basically without the necessary bits of warning, they were unprepared. Add on the fact that Omi himself was just gone since he froze himself, and it basically ensured that the Xiaolin monks were lacking in all the wrong areas that allowed evil to easily claim a victory. And not just evil, Jack Spicer. Kind of going back to what happened in the Sands of Time episode, I personally think that one of the reasons why this future came to be was because of Jack Spicer's plan in that episode. Now, I'm not going to claim that was the entire thing. It's just a theory at the end of the day. But what I believe happened is that at some point in the future, Jack Spicer was going to win. And whether or not it was because he got the help of his older self or not, I don't know. But clearly, something happened in the future that old Omi was trying to prevent. Something dark. Something similar to what we're seeing in this episode, but even if not the same, at least kind of in that same vein. But regardless, without old Omi there to basically turn the tide of battle towards the side of good, it just allowed evil to net an easy victory. To think of it like this, going back to one of my previous vlogs, there was one episode in Ben 10 Alien Force where Gwen went back in time to the beginning of Season 3 and basically altered time so that the accident that would have resulted in Ben and Kevin trying to hack the Omnitrix never happened. The end result, the Omnitrix was never broken and Kevin was never mutated into that mishmash of all the things he had absorbed throughout the series. And so it saved Kevin from being turned into a quote-unquote monster, but when Gwen returned to the present, she found that the world was in a bit of a crap hole, because in this new timeline, Charmcaster and Hex wound up launching an attack on the world, and because Kevin wasn't suitably powered up enough to help Ben and Gwen with the fight, it allowed the bad guys to basically win. And that's kind of what happened in this timeline for Xiaolin Showdown. Like I said, without old Omi to give the proper warning, and without Omi by their side to help pick up the slack, the Xiaolin monks just lost. Not helped by the fact that in this timeline, apparently Kimiko was named a leader, and even she admits that she probably didn't do so much of a good job considering the current state of the world. On top of that, when it comes down to the Shen Gong Wu, well, Jack Spicer has them all. Part of the reason why he's been able to net such an easy victory in this reality is because he wound up attacking the Xiaolin Temple some years ago, and he stole all their Shen Gong Wu. And thus, with their power, he was not only able to trap the Xiaolin monks in this prison, but he was able to basically take over the remainder of the world. And as we'll see later in the episode, it basically gave him the extra oomph that he needed to not only basically be humanity's supreme Dark Emperor, but he actually overpowered all the other big bads. As in a later scene in the episode, we actually find that Wuya, Chase Young, and Hannibal Roy Bean are all locked up or chained up or something, and they're basically immobile. Although it's kind of weird the way they're locked up, as Hannibal is just locked in a cage with the words living fruit or giant fruit under him. Wuya's hanging on the wall in a cheerleader outfit, which I gotta say, nice. And Chase Young, kind of in a similar vein of fan service, I think. He is stripped down to his undies, is just basically spread eagle in a pair of stocks, not lying on a table, but just above it, while what looks like a paintbrush is painting something gold on his chest. I don't get it. I don't get it. But then again, maybe it's eye candy. What do I know? They trot out Wuya all the time, so why not do the same with Chase Young? I don't fucking know. Point is, Jack won. The one guy that everyone underestimated and everyone laughed at took over the world, and now everything's a crap hole. As such, Omi's kind of lamenting that this is all his fault, that if he hadn't altered history by freezing himself, then the world wouldn't be in such a state. However, before he really has enough time to ponder this, he and the other Xiaolin monks are taken away from the prison because they're being brought to the arena, where they're supposed to be brought in and fight some of Jack's robots, which in this case are lion bots, which I'm guessing Jack uses to replace Chase Young's cats. And it's here we also actually get to see Jack Spicer in the future, and gotta say, he's doing a lot better than what I thought he would be. Like, the last time we saw old Jack, he was feeble. He could barely really keep himself in line. He didn't know where he was at any given time, and his moments of lucidity were brief at best. This Jack, however, despite being old, is doing a lot better for himself. Now, physically, he's a shrimp. We see later that he's basically just all skin, no muscle, but to kind of supplement that, he now constantly walks around in a giant suit of armor, which definitely makes him look a lot bigger and more imposing, helped by the fact that he does have a handful of physically powered Shen Gong Wu on him, like the Fist of Tebigong or the Third Arm Sash. So in other words, Jack managed to supplant his weaknesses by, well, utilizing his robotics, making him stronger. Either way, regardless, he has the Xiaolin monks brought to the arena with the intent of them fighting the cats, and it's also here where Omi runs into Master Feng, who is not doing so well in his old age, as his mind is clearly going, and even he admits he doesn't know where he is at any given time, but he does have brief moments of lucidity. And so when Omi sees him and apologizes for all this, Master Feng, in one of those moments, does actually comfort Omi and does let him know that well, the future is not set in stone. It can be changed, so Omi can change it. However, he doesn't really have a lot of time to comfort Omi as he's brought out into the arena, and actually, in an honestly kind of funny background event, as the Xiaolin monks are talking, we see Master Feng standing in the arena, and it looks like just kind of on pure instinct, he's whooping Jack Spicer's robots. It's actually kind of great. But regardless, with the Xiaolin monks, while the majority of them feel like that they really can't do anything, it's Raimundo that basically tells them, come on, we may be old, but we're still Xiaolin monks. We gotta turn the tide here. And as such, they basically organize a plan with the help of Dojo, who managed to come along by hiding from the robots using the Shroud of Shadows, and as such, with his help and with the help of the Shen Gong Wu that Omi brought with him from the past, they devise a plan to not only escape their cell, but also find where Jack Jack Spicer hid his Shengong Wu. As well, the thing is, if old Omi wasn't around, then that means that the sands of time are not hidden. Jack must have them, so they gotta find them. As such, like I said, they get out of the cell, which does lead to them finding the other group of villains, and as such, the plan is this. Using the Denshi Bunny, Kimiko is going to travel through the wires of Jack's base until he can find the room that has the Shengong Wu vault. Raimundo is going to listen in on her with the mind reader conch, and once she finds the vault room, then they'll rush to her location. As such, Kimiko does this while taking out some robots, because why not? Well, unfortunately, Jack ends up finding the Xiaolin monks while they're snooping around his base, and so, of course, this actually does lead to a cool fight scene where we actually do see some of the, honestly, lamer Shengong Wu get used, like the cannon blaster or the Mikoto arm, which actually is pretty cool. Apparently when it's used, it can actually give someone strength to match the fist of Tebigong, so good on that. But regardless, Kimiko does find the Shengong Wu vault, and so once she has it, Raimundo is able to let the group know, we gotta go now, and so they manage to make a getaway, even destroying Jack Spicer's suit, and once they break through to where the vault is, they block the door by using the Orb of Tornami to freeze the robots in place, and they do manage to get into the vault, which of course the lock is 1, 2, 3, because this is still Jack Spicer and he's still a dumbass. Regardless, they do manage to find the Sands of Time, but unfortunately, before they get the chance to use it, that's when more robots show up, just bursting through all the walls with Jack Spicer hot on their heels. And as such, while the Xiaolin monks do their best to try and fight them off, well, it's not a winning. They're not going to win this. It's a losing battle in every sense of the word. As just one by one, the Xiaolin monks are taken out. As Clay is blasted with several lasers, which throw him out of the equation. Kimiko is picked up by the robots, and while we don't actually see what happens, the way the robot's holding her, it looks like it's about to rip her in half. While Raimundo just throws the sands to Omi and just tells him to stop all this from happening, and well. We don't see it, but it is very heavily implied that he is crushed by one of the robot's feet. And Omi, unfortunately, is helpless to stop it. And he gets so emotionally distraught by what he sees, he can't even react as the robots point all their lasers at him. And it's only thanks to Dojo coming in and activating the Sands of Time that they manage to get out of there. But once they're gone, Omi just breaks down crying because, well, let's be honest here, he just saw his friends get wiped out in front of his eyes. I can't see any conceivable universe where that wouldn't leave Omi scarred. However, Dojo does try to comfort Omi by letting them know that they've gone back in time, they can prevent all that from happening. And sure enough, going back to Omi's whole plan, they did arrive 1,500 years in the past. And wouldn't you know, and coincidence of all coincidences, they arrive at the moment when Master Dashi is fighting Wuya before she got sealed away. And we learn that there were more details about the final battle that we weren't aware of, as we see Master Dashi fighting off against a horde of Wuya's rock monsters, but he's not alone, as fighting alongside him are Master Mongguan, who has hair now, and Chase Young, who actually does clean up well when he's on the good side, and he is still just as skilled of a fighter. And the episode ends with the trio of warriors charging at Wuya's forces, while Omi just watches with awe. So yeah, that was Time After Time Part 1. My thoughts on it, well, like with most two-parters, I can't really give my full thoughts on everything until I see both parts, but as a beginning, I think it's pretty good. I admit, the first third of the episode, I think, kind of drags its feet a little, because it's ultimately kind of pointless. The whole idea of it is that it's supposed to set up that, well, the Xiaolin monks are reaching that final stage where they can finally take the step into figuring out who's going to be the leader. And ultimately, what really happens in that part is just them wondering what they're going to do to prove that they're worthy. As again, they do what they normally do, find a Shengong Wu and try and get away from Jack Spicer, no different than usual. And then after that, they're just trying to figure out, well, what's the next quest that we should do? And then they basically all try spying on each other, which also results in them walking in on Master Fung as he's getting his toenails clipped by Dojo, which scars them all mentally. But the only real bit of significance that the first third has is when the group are attacked by Chase Young and Wuya, as it's that attack that gives Omi the idea to go back in time and stop Chase Young from being corrupted like he was. So, but aside from that, the first third doesn't really feel like it adds more to the story. No, It's the last two-thirds of the episode, though, where things do pick up. Because, well, the future we're presented with, well, not really that different from a lot of the, not really different from a lot of the standard villain take over the world scenarios we've been presented thus far, does still give us enough of a grim outlook that we do understand the severity of the situation. After all, when Omi wakes up in the future, the temple is gone, just basically destroyed, with only the barest of what remains left behind. And even now, when Omi's wandering around it, it's still not a safe place because Jack Spicer's robots are wandering around. And like I said, these are more elite models than what the group are used to. And while Omi is able to take out a good chunk, is able to take out a good few of them, their numbers are still too great. And even the ones he does take out find ways of basically getting themselves back in the game when their weapons all reassemble into a new robot. So it does help showcase that these robots are a lot stronger than what you'd expect from the former evil boy genius. I say former because he's an old guy now, but you get what I mean. And on top of that, seeing the older Xiaolin monks basically beaten but not broken does kind of break your heart a little, as in many ways you can recognize them, and a lot of their spirit is still there. As when the group realizes that Omi is back, they're all happy to see him. They all just kind of talk and joke, and it's clear that age has mellowed them a little. Even Raimundo, while he still gets in a few angry jabs, is still kind of the one he feels a lot more calm in this future, as he's the one to basically pull Omi in and let him know, look, there is no old you here because you froze yourself. And so as the other Xiaolin monks just kind of bring Omi up to speed, they don't feel angry about him leaving. They're just happy that he's okay, which makes sense considering the situation. Odds are they were probably wondering where the hell Omi and Dojo went all those years prior. But considering the current state of the world, just getting a little bit of good news in the form of Omi coming back safe and sound probably helped lift their spirits a little. And I like that. I genuinely like that. And I can kind of understand that that's the reason why the Xiaolin monks would probably decide, look, we need to finally fix this. Because with Omi coming back, it probably gave them the idea that there is still a little bit of hope left. And if Omi's absence is what led to this world being the state that it was, then now that Omi's back in the equation, maybe he can turn the tide. Especially since, like we established, since old Omi technically never existed in this new timeline, that means the sands of time are somewhere that they can easily grab them. And I like that. I do actually like that. And I like how the Xiaolin monks organize themselves to try and work this plan out. They use what they have available. They actually do manage to form a good plan, and they may be old, but they still kick ass. Even Kimiko does her best. Like, old Kimiko is clearly not as aware and in the moment as she was in the past, but she is still capable. Like I said, when she used the Denshi Bunny to travel through Jack's power lines, like she took out some of his robots just for the sake of it, and she was keeping her eye on it, keeping herself focused until she finally got to the vault. And while she did pass out upon getting there, because we gotta sneak in old person jokes, because why the hell not, she at least still carried her weight, and the other Xiaolin monks still fought with whatever vigor they had in order to actually go up against Jack Spicer. And they even did get a few little victories in there. They trashed his giant suit and showed just how feeble he was. They managed to get through the walls. They managed to get to his vault. They managed to get in because Jack Spicer's still a doofus and made the combination 1, 2, 3. It's actually, again, it shows them still being capable, and it's nice. And again, to kind of do a little subtle hint towards where this two-parter is going, the one who takes charge in the situation is actually Raimundo. He's the one that inspires the Xiaolin monks to keep going and lets them know, we're still Xiaolin monks, we have to keep fighting. He's the one that thinks up the plan in order to find the Shen Gong Wu, and he's the one that keeps everybody's spirits up despite everything. Yeah, Omi is the one that feels lament over the situation, but I like that it's kind of nice seeing Raimundo taking charge and reminding them, we're still the good guys, and we can't just sit back and let evil win this day. I like that. It's really good. Although the ending, in my opinion, it's some suitably dark shit. Again, like to see the Xiaolin monks have another triumph and victory as they get the sands of time, only for that victory to be just squelched right away as Jack Spicer's legion of robots come in and just start basically wiping them out. It's kind of a horrifying sight. And they don't show any gore, of course. It's still a kid's show. They can't do that. But admittedly, implied gore is a lot more horrifying because you realize that these are some of your favorite cartoon characters from this series, and they're basically being slaughtered. And what makes it even worse, they're being slaughtered by the guy who became the joke villain. Hold on one second. Sorry, Chindy wanted in. But yeah, like I said, they're being slaughtered by the guy who essentially became the joke villain. The guy who, throughout all of Season 3, was shat on by everybody. And now here he is, actually getting not only a victory, but probably one of the biggest victories of his entire villainous career. He has taken over the world. He has gotten all the Shen Gong Wu. All the other big bads are locked up and are just there for his own amusement and entertainment. This I like that. And while we still clearly see Jack Spicer still just loving the whole minutia of being the ruler of the world, well, in this case, he has the power to finally back it up. He still talks all grandiose. He still talks all grandiose. He still likes flaunting his power in your face. Only now he has the power to back that up, and despite him still being Jack Spicer, evil boy doofus, he's still, the fact that he has the legion of robots at his side who can basically come in and actually outnumber the good guys on a much grander scale helps kind of showcase that regardless of whether or not you think Jack Spicer is a moron or not, he clearly is a moron with power. And he's not taking shit lying down. The world is his oyster, and he is going to have a ball. So, again, I do like that, and I like that by the end, when Omi does finally manage to go back in time and sees Master Dashi fighting alongside both Chase Young and Master Monk Guan, it does still leave kind of a bittersweet note. Now, admittedly, the ending does feel like it still has more triumph to it, as we see Omi is in awe of seeing these three masters just fighting alongside each other and whooping the forces of evil's ass. So I like that. I do like that, as it's a nice way of ending things, but at the same time, this is right after Omi just saw his friends get slaughtered in the far future. And what the thing is, while this moment does give us some hope for things getting better, at the same time, you can't exactly forget that moment. And you also know that Omi's actions right now are what count the most, because it's up to him to prevent that future from happening. And I like that. I genuinely like that, as it adds an extra layer to everything. And while you're still while by the end of the episode you're happy to see Omi in a safe place, and again, it's cool seeing these three masters kicking ass, you also want to know how things are going to progress, because Omi has to do whatever he can to make sure that horrible future doesn't happen. So again, I like that. And again, I can't give my full thoughts on the two-parter, because again, this is just one half of the story, but overall, for a first part, it's good. Like I said, the first third of this episode kind of drags and doesn't really add much to the plot, but the last two-thirds, I think, really pick up the slack and do really present us with a world that definitely feels like a doomsday scenario, and does manage to get across the severity situation and why it's a good idea to try and reverse this as quickly as possible. So overall, I think it's definitely a good first part. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching, and I hope you tune in next week, as not only will we be looking at part 2 of Time After Time, but we'll be looking at the final episode of Xiaolin Showdown. So till then, I hope you have a good Friday, and take care.